Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.
Joining us now is a man who needs no introduction on this podcast, but he gets one anyways. You've read his brilliant work on The Ringer as he proclaims the wonder of Patrick Mahomes for the world to read. You most likely read his many thoughts on the 2000s Royals on his legendary blog, Rany on the Royals. And then you can now catch him on Sundays with 810 Sports' Seren Petro as they talk about the hottest team in the majors on Kaufman Corner. Of course, you've also heard him grace us with his presence so we can all geek out about the Chiefs. On Twitter, it's at Jazayerli. Rany, Jazayerli, how the heck are you tonight?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing awesome. We are, of course, in prime Royals hype mode. It's May 2nd. They're 19-13. I did not expect to be mentioning the Royals to you at the beginning of this, but how are you feeling about your favorite baseball team and their chances of making things really exciting around Kansas City in the fall?
So, on the one hand, I am very confused by the Royals season. I am very unsure as to whether this is sustainable or not. So that's one level. But on another level, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just enjoying it. Like, the Royals are good. They're fun.
Mm-hmm.
They're interesting. They are starting to get, the attention of the sport. And they are coming off of such a horrible season.
Yeah.
That if they just finish above 500, they are on pace to, take their place among the most historic improvements we've ever seen from a baseball team. So
sure,
the vibes are immaculate, right? The team is, look, things could fall apart, and I think we all, on some level, know that. We've been down this road before. They could collapse like they did in, was it 2009 when they started hot?
18-11.
Famously.
18-11, yeah, famously 18-11. I was like, when they were 17-11 and then they lost, I was like, maybe it's okay.
It was,
I don't want to repeat that. Or it could just be kind of a fun summer, but then a disappointing fall like in 2003 when they finished 83 and 79, but led the division for most of the summer and then collapsed down the stretch because they were a complete fluke. This team, there are elements of what they're doing that feel flukish. There are also elements of this team that feel completely sustainable, and that's why I don't know what's going on. But the difference between all the other Royals, hot starts of not that many of them, frankly.
Sure. The couple
of the last 25 years, or even the 2014-2015 Royals now, this is all occurring under the backdrop of the back-to-back defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And so while on the one hand, I think the sport thinks of the Royals as a fun story right now, I am incredibly excited to see just how angry the fan bases of basically every other city in America would be if the Royals, A, make the playoffs, and B, go on a 2014-like playoff run.
I mean, inject that into my veins, Randy.
When we think the Schadenfreude, the combination of pride in our team and Schadenfreude of other fan bases could not get any better. Like we talked about the last time I was on, right in the week of the Super Bowl win, and we were discussing the high of, we just won a Super Bowl. We just beat the Niners again. We got revenge there. And how can this get any better? And oh my God, is that John Elway on my screen carrying this trophy in the Raiders home stadium and delivering it to us? Every time you think that Schadenfreude can't get any better. Just imagine if the Royals have a chance, like they get close enough to the World Series where people start talking about the possibility that the Super Bowl and World Series trophies would both be in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas. I don't know where.
Or Kansas. Yeah.
I don't care.
Wherever.
At the same time that Kansas City is now title town.
Man.
Look, guys, this is the best run. This might be the best sporting run we're going to have in our lives. Enjoy it, embrace it. Just the thinking about the possibility of that right now on May the 2nd, that's enough to make this Royal season a success in my mind, no matter what happens from this point on.
Completely agreed. Not an embarrassment. Tons of fun right now. Really as much as we could have possibly asked out of this team after coming off 106 losses. So we've definitely been having our fun with it. Austin and I have privately joked about, like, with the Chiefs, I'd be like, I mean, I know it's not scripted, but if it were, it could be something like this. Like, it's just almost too hilarious to be true. So about the Chiefs, it's been now the offseason has been a couple months of being the Super Bowl champs again. It's really been 15 months of being the Super Bowl champs. How would you, scale of 1 to 10, rate your offseason experience as a fan of the best team in the universe?
I mean, obviously the vibes of being defending champs, that's a 10 out of 10. No notes there. The offseason as a whole, in terms of just, can they sustain this? Can they three-peat? Can they, keep this going into next year? I'm probably a solid 7.5 or 8 out of 10. I think they've had a good offseason. I have no major, maybe some minor quibbles with some of the decisions they made, but no major complaints. I mean, it is such a solid, such a comforting feeling rooting for a sports organization that knows what it's doing and that knows what it's doing. Because I have so much experience with the opposite.
Yeah.
That this organization has, already earned our trust, so that when there are 50-50 decisions that may, could go either way, whatever decision they make, you have some faith in it. And at the same time, most of the decisions they make, they don't have to justify. Like, they are on the big decisions making what I think are the right decisions, whether it's deciding to go with Chris Jones and trade L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, that's probably the defining sort of decision point in this offseason to date, is knowing that they could not afford to bring back both. How do they resolve that tension? I think they sensibly made the decision that while Chris Jones is going to be more expensive and while Chris Jones is older, his skill set ages better and he is simply more indispensable. And they found a way to make that work, where they were able to bring him back and they were able to get talent in the form of a future draft pick for L'Jarius Sneed. I know people were like, we thought they could get more for him. I mean, we hope they could, but I think when you consider the importance of salary in this discussion and how much L'Jarius Sneed got from the Titans in terms of a contract, I think a future third probably is about what he was worth. And could they have gotten this year's third instead? Maybe, maybe not, but they had to make a move at some point so they could start signing some of the other players that were kind of being held up, Mike Dana and things like that they couldn't sign until they cleared some salary cap space. So I think they made a smart decision there. We'll get into the draft. I have zero reservations.
Oh, we'll get there. Yeah.
And even the small things. I mean, signing Carson Wentz to be a backup QB that almost feels like some sort of like victory cigar decision.
Yeah.
Like, let's bring in Carson Wentz,
we're just showing off.
And it's like, also it's like, hey, you guys want us to run the quarterback sneak on 4th and 1? We signed a quarterback who's one claim to fame, one claim to actual like greatness might be that he is incredibly good at running the quarterback sneak, to the point where we can literally just pull Patrick Mahomes off the field on 4th and 1, bring in Carson Wentz. Everybody knows what we're doing, and we'll do it anyway.
I don't think I knew that about Carson Wentz. That
apparently
he was
his stats. He's exceptional in. I mean, he's a big
that's
dude.
Great.
And now some of that maybe it's the Eagles, like that's just what they do, because obviously
Jason Kelce's stat.
yeah, exactly. Maybe Jason Kelce's stat. I don't know. But I'm hoping that is something they're going to open up, because otherwise, like you spend a roster spot and a fair amount of money on a guy who otherwise you hope never ever sees the field.
Right.
It makes sense to say, hey, maybe we find a way to actually get value out of him on 8 plays a year or something like that. So there's that. But even if not, it's just the idea that we can win a Super Bowl with Carson Wentz as our backup QB. So
let's unpack some of that a little bit. And you kind of started with Chris Jones. So Brett Veach famously does not pay players into their 30s. He made an exception. And as an aside, while you were speaking about sort of the aging curve for players, I will say, I don't know why this came to me, but I have to give you credit for something that you wrote, I don't know, whenever the Royals drafted Bubba Starling, whatever year that was, about the age of high school drafted players. We'll probably circle back to this when we get into the draft. But I think that's the first time in my life as a sports fan that I really started to think very much about not only the age of players when they're drafted and their competition level, their breakout age and that sort of thing, but also when players start to decline. And so thank you for that. It's a pivotal moment in my life as a sports fan. You probably didn't expect that. And I didn't either. I
thank you for making me feel old. As always.
It was only 2011, Rany. That's
it wasn't that long ago. But all that's to say that, was it surprising to you that the Chiefs decided to give the bag to Chris Jones? And is there a part of you that thinks, I guess first part of the question is, is there a rational part of your brain that's at all concerned about paying a player of his age that's kind of going into what should be the twilight of his career? And then follow up to that, if there is there another part of your plan that's like, I don't care, Hall of Famer, Chief for life, give the man whatever he wants?
Well, I mean, on the second part, of course, Chris Jones is one of 3 guys on this roster that I think it's perfectly okay to be to throw out analytics and cold calculating reason a little bit. I mean, obviously the Chiefs just gave Travis Kelce not a contract extension. They basically just ripped up his contract and gave him a raise, right? Which I don't think they're doing that for any but one of 3 players on this roster. And that's okay, both because of what they have accomplished in their career to this point, and also what I think they demonstrated as recently as the Super Bowl, they are still capable of. Maybe in Travis's case, he can't sustain it for 17 regular season games, but I don't care, because as he showed us this year, if they manage him correctly in terms of load, I don't want to call it load management, because he actually played most of the time. Yeah. He got the 1 game off, but if he starts to decline just a little bit this coming year, we'll get into the draft. They drafted Jared Wiley. I'm sure that was at least part of the thinking was, let's take some of the weight off of Travis Kelce during the regular season, so that we know we go into the playoffs at 100%, and for 3 or 4 games, he can give us everything he's got. And I think with Chris Jones, there's some of that too, that even if he starts to decline, it may not be in terms of his value per play. It may just be the number of plays on which he can have an impact. But as he has shown time and time again in the playoffs, in absolute, game situations, 3rd, 4th down, he almost single-handedly, we can look at half a dozen or more plays where if he is not on the field, the Chiefs probably lose a game.
Yeah.
Whether it's against the Bengals in the AFC Championship the last year or against the 49ers in the Super Bowl this year. So that part of it I'm fine with anyway, but I will be honest, I'm not that concerned about his age relative to someone like, let's say, L'Jarius Sneed, because of the position. I think in football, the aging curve is so dependent on what position you play.
Sure.
I'm not an expert analyst on this to the point where I know what the aging curve. I assume some studies have been done looking at aging curves by position. If you guys are familiar with that, I'd love to look at the data. But just from observing the sport, Tom Brady was an elite quarterback at 45. I don't think there's any other position other than kicker or punter.
Yeah, right.
Where you could be on the field in your 40s and
not
be functional. But there are, but let's look at that. Like, what other positions could you do it? What was his name? Andrew Whitworth, the left tackle for the Rams.
Yep.
Won a Super Bowl, was still very good at 40. Right? Like again, it comes down to how reliant is the position on speed.
Yeah.
Is speed. So in the trenches, linemen we see all the time are functional well into their 30s.
Yep.
How old was Willie Roaf when he was still like it? I mean, Willie Roaf retired not because he was bad. I think he was just done with football.
Yeah,
And
Willie
was
Well,
like 30.
and Trent Williams, who's probably still the best
Right. He's like, what,
tackle in the game,
33 or something?
he's going to be 36 in July.
Willie was 35 in his final year with the
Yeah, he was
Chiefs
a
and in the
second
NFL.
team All-Pro. At 34, he was a
Right.
first team All-Pro.
Right. He was a monster still in his mid-30s. Yeah.
I mean, he was exceptional, right? So offensive linemen, I think offensive linemen aged, the best because on offense, your job is simply to not move. You are the immovable.
That's good. Yeah.
Whereas
right.
on the defensive line, you're the irresistible force. So
yeah,
it is, you do need some more of that on the defensive side. But I mean, we just saw, Aaron Donald retired. He wasn't bad. He was starting to have health issues.
Right.
He was an exceptional player in his early 30s. But anytime a cornerback, any defensive back turns 30, and just there are klaxons going off over their heads. I mean, everyone's talking about how great the Eagles draft was. They drafted a Cooper DeJean, and I think there was another cornerback in their draft because James Bradbury and who's the other starter? They're both like 30 or 31. Everyone's like,
Darius Slay.
Yeah, Darius Slay. It's just like, oh my God, we have to replace these guys immediately, right? And on some level, there's some truth to that. Defensive backs, you're so reliant on your speed that 30 is the end of the line for a lot of these guys, and then it starts to decline even in their late 20s. And I think that's important here because L'Jarius Sneed was, older for a draft pick when he was taken. He is 27 years old. He's basically 2.5 years younger than Chris Jones. We act about like Chris Jones is like this ancient guy. Relative to the position, I don't think Chris Jones. I think there's a possibility Chris Jones will still be an elite player after L'Jarius Sneed has lost his place among the elite. I absolutely, if I had to bet on that, on one or the other, I absolutely would bet on Chris Jones. We talk about him being in his 30s, but he actually hasn't turned. He turns 30 in July. Like he will be 30, but he's just starting his 30 stats. So you're getting for age 30, 31, 32. You could get out of the contract after his age 31 season if you really had to. I think there's a good possibility that third year maybe he'll be a little overpaid, or maybe they'll redo his deal, extend it a little bit more, move some of the money out. But I would be actually quite surprised if the Chiefs end up like cutting him, maybe making him a cap casualty or whatever in 2 years.
Sure,
I think he will be on this team for 3 more years, and then at that point, you hope that they find a way to keep him around in a limited role for a lower salary and let him play his entire career in Kansas City. So, I think, I absolutely think they made the right decision, and I do think he will age at a fairly gentle decline.
Well, one reason that cornerbacks might have such a hard time aging is because all these damn fast wide receivers on the other side. Like these guys are insane. And so, of course, we're kind of going through the offseason in chronological order. So after the Chris Jones news, we've got the Hollywood Brown signing. And the Chiefs brought him in, obviously because one of the number one needs on this team, if not the number one need, was the wide receiver room. They were such a disappointment last year. They had so many high profile screw ups and drops and all that stuff. We hadn't talked since they signed Hollywood. How was your take on, 1 year, $7 million up to 10 or 11 with some incentives? Obviously not a huge investment money wise, but I just am so excited about the potential in the offense. How do you feel that Hollywood Brown fits with what the Chiefs are trying to do?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, was he the best wide receiver they could have gotten? No, probably not. There's some risk here. He's incredible speed guy, but he really had trouble at times, meshing with the offense, especially with the Cardinals. Right. Although when you break it down, his struggles basically were when he didn't have Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson on the field.
Sure,
it was terrible, right? It's like there are some mitigating circumstances there, but for the value, for the price, for the commitment, 1 year. And what, $7 million guaranteed?
Yeah,
and like maxing out at 10 or 11. I mean, he's almost certainly going to make less money than Marquez Valdez-Scantling made last year.
Definitely. Yeah, right? He made 11, or he made 33 over 3 years, which is crazy.
Right, I think he got like 11, maybe with some, maybe a little bit more than that last year. But the point is this: if everything goes well, he'll match that.
Yeah.
And he's 26? Yeah, he'll be 27 in June.
Mm-hmm.
So, for 1 year, the risk is small. And I really do think this is an example of God helps those who help themselves. Patrick Mahomes helps. Football helps those who have Patrick Mahomes, right? Like there's a Mahomes bump here, right? Where we always talk about
banger.
Players want to play for, play with Patrick Mahomes, and we're willing to do it. Not everybody is willing to take a discount, but you don't need everybody. You just need one guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't know if Hollywood was turning out massively bigger offers, but he might have been able to get a 2-year, a 2-year commitment somewhere else or whatever.
Sure.
But he wants to play here, and from him, it's not just I want a ring. It's also he's young enough that I want to put up numbers for a year with Patrick Mahomes throwing to me, and I can make more money in the long run if I do that. I mean, probably worked out for
Juju.
Juju. I was going to say they leave you and you immediately for them for
Juju, Juju right? For sure it did.
I
mean, he might as well have disappeared off the face of the earth after he left.
He went to New England, which is kind of the same thing.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, man, we're just
we're there already after only a short couple years. We are now there.
We got to give a quick plug too. I'm glad you mentioned New England because our longtime listeners, I don't know, this would have been well before your time, Rany, but Tom Brady is getting roasted this weekend. We did a Tom Brady roast like 3 years
2020,
ago. And it was an absolute banger. I'm saying whatever you hear on Sunday, it will not be anywhere close to how thoroughly we destroyed Tom Brady 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, then I need to go back and find that. But let's be honest, guys. Let's just prepare ourselves now for the Patrick Mahomes roast in 15 or.
I can't wait.
I can't wait for that.
It'll be good.
Well, I mean, like everything else about the comparison, the Patrick Mahomes roast will be better than the Tom Brady.
Of course.
Yes.
100%.
For one thing, they have Gronk roasting him. We're going to have Travis Kelce. I think I know which one is going to be a better, a better crowd pleaser. So
huge upgrade.
So kind of continuing through the offseason in chronological order, we kind of already addressed the L'Jarius Sneed trade, but there obviously was a spot of trouble. And for a team that does as much winning on the field as it does, it is kind of a little bit shocking how frequently this team finds itself in negative headlines, obviously talking about Rashee Rice and his incident down in Dallas. There has been some scuttlebutt this week that the Chiefs could be preparing for a half season or longer suspension for him. Does that, I mean, obviously the vibes surrounding that were poor, and I think we're all in agreement that it was a really stupid thing for him to do. But do you have any concerns about how that will impact the Chiefs' bottom line? Do you see this affecting the floor or ceiling of this team at all?
A little bit, sure. I mean, first off, I do want to reiterate, Rashee Rice was a dumbass. And I'm mad at him, and I'm very thankful, as I'm sure, or I hope he certainly is, that he is not known as Henry Ruggs Jr. right now.
That's right.
And it's just dumb luck that wasn't the case. And having seen what happened to Henry Ruggs, just makes his decision to drag race on a public highway at rush hour, apparently, that much dumber. So, if it turns out to be a half season or even more, honestly, I personally am not going to be broken up by. I've assumed all along. I've always had I've had the number 6 in my mind, 6-game suspension.
Yeah, that's
used to be, and there were some people saying, "Oh, this could be just 2 to 4 games." I'm like, frankly, forget my fandom. Just as a fan of the sport, but also like a fan of like legal consequences for being a dumbass, and also for just like for him to learn a lesson. I think this needs more than a slap in the wrist. I think 6 games would be perfectly fine. I'm honestly, from a Chiefs season perspective, the only thing we'd ask for is that this occurs at the beginning of the season, right? Like if he misses the first 6 games, we need him to be rounding into shape for the postseason, which kind of would resemble what he did this past season.
Yes,
he only became a truly elite weapon in December, and that was perfect timing. So, you would hope that this can get resolved. Like the facts of the case are pretty well known here, so I don't, know why it would take so long for the wheels of justice to turn. But this is the NFL, and God only knows.
And let's not forget they slapped Willie Gay with that bizarre suspension
mid-season.
It started in week 2 or week
3,
whatever it was, a couple years ago. even though that case was resolved over the summer. I don't know who can predict what the NFL will do discipline wise, but obviously thankful that wasn't worse.
Right.
Let's turn the vibes back around here. And we've got just a bundle of contract extensions to kind of run over here. Andy Reid and Brett Veach, both back on new deals. We'll get to Brett Veach.
Wait, hold on. Andy Reid.
He didn't retire. He didn't retire.
But I was told by one of the most
reliable
respected members of the football media that the Chiefs were preparing for. Like they had a new coach lined up, and wow, this. I need a moment, guys. I need a moment. Hold on.
Yeah, it will never get old clowning on Mike Florio, and I'm sure you saw his explanation behind it. He's like, "This is a peek into how the sausage gets made," and he's like, "Usually, if I tweet something ridiculous, people will tell me that I'm wrong, and I did, and nobody told me that I was totally off base, so therefore I was right." And I'm like, "What?" I mean. The guy is a lawyer by trade, and I'm deeply offended by that and embarrassed by that. But like, I understand you didn't go to J school and you're not a trained journalist, but like, that's just not how journalism works. Everybody knows that's not how journalism works.
I have bad news to break to you. This is how all of us see you lawyers. So you might as well accept that.
That is unfortunate. But
I think in Mike's case, I think what he's not picking up on is that his reputation has sunk to the point where teams aren't they don't think it's worth their time.
They're not even bothering.
Deny his reports.
Exactly.
They're just treating him like some random blogger that said something. Like they wouldn't.
He's basically on the level of JP football at this point.
Exactly.
And that's fine. So we'll get to Brett Veach in a minute because we're going to talk about the draft. But Andy Reid not retiring. He has a new contract which runs down through 2029. I mean, I know there's a lot that can happen. He's getting up there in age, and he would be one of the oldest coaches in the history of the NFL if he does coach through the end of this contract. But let's just assume for a second that he does. And he's coaching this team, and he's coaching Patrick Mahomes through the 2029 season. Is he a lock to eclipse Shula and Belichick and every other coach in the history of the NFL as the greatest coach of all time if we assume that he actually does coach through 2029?
I mean, I think what's interesting is you wonder, might that be motivating him to stick around, for as long as it takes to get the record? Because I wrote about this for the Ringer just over a year ago, that people were not taking seriously enough the chances that Andy Reid might end up being the winningest NFL coach of all time. This is at a moment when people were still talking about Bill Belichick in that role, and things have changed even more in Andy's favor here because Bill Belichick no longer has a job, and he's only 14 wins behind Don Shula. Bill Belichick, right? Shula's at 347. Belichick is at 333. And actually, I'm looking at this list. Is this list including postseason wins? Because I think it is.
Don't even.
Let me use regular. And I think that's reasonable. Like, let's put it this way. That will probably favor Andy Reid, certainly with Don Shula, because if you use regular season wins, he's behind by 70. I believe he's at 258 right now. Does that sound right? Yeah. And Don Shula's at 328. But if you throw in postseason wins, he's behind, at least according to the list I'm looking at here, by 63.
Sure.
And
I mean,
actually, no, it was before the Super Bowl. 62 now. So,
nice.
So either way, the point is he's maybe 5, but let's say it's comfortably six seasons away, right? 6 seasons away from passing Don Shula. You would need to average 12 wins in a 17 and soon to be 18 game season, probably.
Right.
Plus the playoffs. I mean,
plus the playoffs.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the regular season wins here. But if you use the playoffs, then God, he could be there in 5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
So really, I mean, it's just a matter of Bill Belichick a year ago was the guy he had to catch more than Shula.
Right.
Shula's not a moving target. Bill Belichick is suddenly not a moving target either.
Isn't that crazy?
He might get back in there, but
he might not. I mean, the reporting that came out a couple of weeks ago Atlanta was the only team that really considered him, and they didn't seriously consider him, which seems crazy to me in light of recent events.
I was going to say, no, actually,
concerning Atlanta,
it doesn't seem crazy at all to me.
No, that Atlanta doesn't know what they're doing.
Now that I understand where Atlanta is coming from,
that is completely fair. But
Yeah.
it definitely doesn't sound like teams were knocking down his door exactly to try and bring him back in the league. So I don't know.
There's a difference between Andy Reid is 66 years old. He just turned 66. Bill Belichick is what, 72, I want to say.
Right.
I think right,
72
and
years old.
Is demanding full control over everything.
Well, that's the big thing. I mean, Bill Belichick, I think to the end was probably still a really good head coach. The problem was he essentially was functioning as their GM, and for the last at least 5 years in New England was a terrible general manager.
Right.
And one of the most important things with that happened with the Chiefs franchise when they hired Andy Reid is that he essentially ceded complete control of player personnel, which is something I think he had at least some hand in Philadelphia, and I think he recognized. It's just too difficult to do both jobs. It's almost impossible to do one. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why anybody would think you can do both.
72 years old. I mean, come on. It's
but for anybody,
but come on.
And you can be, really, even if you could, let's say you have the ability to be really good at both, focus on one and you can be world class. And that's essentially where the Chiefs are, especially when they promoted Brett Veach to that role. I think that we have, enough evidence now with the drafts and also free agent signings, et cetera, to say that Brett Veach is almost as good at his job as Andy Reid is at his. And why on earth would you want to mess with that? The Chiefs are in no position and they signed both of these guys. Like the best thing about the Chiefs when you look at a long-term perspective, other than the fact that they have Patrick Mahomes for as long as they both shall live,
the sun will shine.
Is that it appears that Andy Reid and Brett Veach are still simpatico, right? They are still aligned. They seem, and I mean, we can take it for granted because like Brett Veach was his assistant, they're buddies or whatever. But I mean, you see this with so many winning franchises, dynasties, is egos are ultimately what tend to destroy the brain power. It's not so much the talent. Talent you got to replenish constantly. But when you look at an organizations that just dominate for years or even a decade or whatever, what end up causing them to fall apart, and we saw this so much in New England, was egos. Splitting the smart people together, the smart people away from each other, because the genesis of any great dynasty is getting multiple really, really smart people at the top of their profession working together in synchrony. And when that synchrony is disrupted, as we see, New England is a great example of this. That's when things fall apart. And so as long as those two guys are getting along, they're going to have other assistants leave for other jobs. We've seen that. That is not only the price of success, but kind of something you almost hope to see. That it's like an indication that they are developing. Yeah, they're developing additional talent.
Right.
But those are the guys. Veach, Mahomes, and Reid is this. This triad that this can still be built around for the next decade at least.
Well, we saw some rumors this offseason of Robert Kraft basically calling up Arthur Blank of the Falcons and talking shit about Belichick,
that's when I say
the rift.
There's a rift there, and we've seen drama ever since Deflategate and some of the other stuff that's gone on in New England.
Right.
But I don't see those guys patching it up anytime soon, and if it's kept Belichick. My hope, honestly, is, and from what little we've seen already, I'm really hoping this is the case, that Belichick just turns out to be so much fun in the booth.
He killed it with McAfee. Yeah. I mean, that was...
It's like, where was... I mean, on the one hand, it's like, where was this guy? On the other hand, we know where this guy was. Like, it doesn't surprise me that much. Like, we know he's smart. We know he's smart not in... Like, so many football commentators that drive me crazy, and it makes it, especially on the pregame shows, why I almost never watch them, is that some of these guys are not... Certainly don't present themselves as smart football men. They come across as a dumb football fan's idea of a smart football man.
This is a great.
And I mean, I don't want to talk too much shit about too many people, but like, I can't. I mean, well, I think they've been let go. Phil Simms and Boomer Esiason, but when was the last time they said something that was profound.
Sure.
Never.
Yeah, that's
What
fair.
when is the last, they said
Probably
that
the last time they were in the huddle
that
themselves.
you learned that a hardcore football fan learned something that you did not know from them. I don't feel like it. I feel like it's been a long time.
They've certainly been left in the dust by like the Dan Orlovskis of the world and the people that
Yes, no, that's a very good point.
Can really teach.
Right.
And
Social media has been phenomenal in the sense of
yes,
just like Twitter, 2-minute Twitter, anybody can put those together now, right? And you get somebody who has some credibility, as maybe somebody who played, didn't play long in the league, but like was an NFL quarterback,
right?
And went to Harvard. Not that we should hold that against him. We probably should.
We should.
But like comes out, it's like in one clip, and it's like this guy. I just learned more that I did not know from this guy in one clip that I've learned from Bill Cowher in 10 years on television. So yeah, there's some of that, but like that's the thing. Bill Belichick is so successful that he doesn't have to like pretend to be something he's not.
No.
He just needs to be open about that knowledge, and if he's willing to share it, man, it's going to be fun. I'm actually looking forward, and I can't think of the last time a coach retired, went to the booth, and I'm like
yes.
Sean Payton, John Gruden. Speaking of AFC West, I'm like I never learned. Those guys in the even as announcers, even I was just like, John Gruden never told me anything I didn't that I thought was illuminating. I always felt like he was saying what he thought that we wanted to hear.
Lowest common denominator type stuff.
Yeah.
Totally.
And Bill Belichick is not giving us what we want to hear. He's giving us what we need to hear, and I love it. So,
have you seen the clips of CJ Stroud and Micah Parsons talking ball?
All I saw was the clip about what they would do if they were in the NBA, and CJ Stroud, man. I love this guy so much that I really am starting to feel sorry for the fact that he's going to be losing to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Josh Allen.
So good in this environment, in this format with Micah Parsons, and I've seen about 3 or 4 of like their kind of extended conversations, not like a whole episode, but Stroud is so much better at arguing than Parsons is. He crushes him on. Every time I've seen them talk, it's been like CJ Stroud just running laps around him. So I definitely would recommend.
It just makes me more and more upset that the Panthers took Bryce Young instead, so we have to deal with CJ and the AFC.
Yes, that would have been so much more easy to root for him if he was not.
I'll be honest, I'm worried that I'm going to be really, really mad. I'm already mad, but I'm going to be really, really mad at the Commanders for taking Jaden Daniels over. Maybe in New England. Like how many freaking top 10 quarterbacks have to be in the AFC?
At least one more.
It hasn't stopped us yet, but it's like still annoying.
By the way, I did want to note for anybody that wanted to Google the Andy Reid article that you wrote last February. That's Andy Reid's Decade of Dominance Redefined the Kansas City Chiefs. That's on the Ringer. It was such a good read. So go check that out if you it's all still relevant, obviously, even more. Added another championship to that trophy.
Only 11 regular season wins now. That pace slowed down, but
a little bit. Let's spin forward a little bit to a recent news item, which was the GOAT, Travis Kelce, was given a raise, as we talked about, to be appropriately the highest paid tight end in the league, which, of course, begs the question, what are your top 5 tracks on the Tortured Poets department?
Yes. We're finally getting to the important stuff.
The relevant
of course.
news,
we got to leave it in the middle because if we put it at the beginning, the Swifties will tune in for that, and then they'll just
they won't learn any football. Like
they've been sitting through all of our great nuggets before now.
Well, I hope that they have a greater appreciation for the importance of aging curves in football players and the importance of salary cap discipline.
That's right.
You're welcome. And now to the important stuff. So it's a good album. I don't think it's a great album. I think she is obviously, maybe the best female songwriter ever, and getting up there with the best songwriters of any gender ever. But I almost feel like the wordplay and the lyrics were such a focus for her on this album. Like every 2 lines is like another pun or twist of words that almost outshone the music a little bit. But I think the big thing is that like it is an album that's grounded in sadness, and that I think some of her best songs historically have just been upbeat songs that are optimistic. There isn't a ton of that on here.
No, I agree.
Interestingly, or not really, not surprisingly, certainly, but like the 2 songs on this album that have direct connection to Travis Kelce are among my favorites. And yeah, some of that I'm sure if I weren't a Chiefs fan, I wouldn't feel that way just because I'm going to enjoy quoting who are we to judge the alchemy, when referring to Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce all season long, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Who are we to fight the alchemy? I can't remember the lyrics
fight
right
the
now.
alchemy. Yeah.
But even so, like those songs, they are hopeful and optimistic and fun, and I enjoy that.
Almost like he brought that out in her, which is what you're saying.
Exactly. And so I'm very much looking forward to the next album.
Yes, the Travis Kelce album.
The one that's already
assuming they are still, hopefully together.
She's just
and
going to call it 3P.
Engaged or something. Yeah, that would be awesome.
I don't remember the source on this, but it has happened. Like she's already written several more songs.
There are more songs. Let's hope that we get an entire like upbeat album. Because I really feel like her last album that was just full of just like hit after. Because here's the thing: the question I have on this album: which song is it like a hit? It's not a song for like the Swifties to love and obsess over and break down. Because that's what so much of it. This is an album for the hardcore fans, and that's great.
Yeah.
But like if you are a casual, Love Story and Antihero, but you don't like listen to Taylor Swift all the time. What is the hit on this album?
Well, by downloads, it's Fortnite, but I just don't.
Because that's the first single.
It doesn't do it for me. It's the first single.
I actually do like it quite a bit.
I like it fine, but
But I feel like the last album, because Midnight's had some hits, but maybe not as many as some of her previous albums. And then Evermore and Folklore were to me they're mood albums.
Yeah,
they're albums to listen to.
This is a lot more like those.
But so to me, really, you have to go back to Lover to find an album where it's just like, oh, that's a great song. Oh, that's a great song. Oh, that's a great like you just listen to and people love it. And that was, that was there was a lot of.
I was going to say that's the last sort of.
Right, I think that there were some references to Joe Alwyn that were very different than the references to Joe, right? Like
we
go from London Boy to So Long London.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so that's what it is. So I'm really hopeful the next one will be, just what it's like to be in love and to have fun, and I like that. I will also really love like the synth pop thing. She's good at any genre, but I would kill for her to like just come out with like a country album again, like to shock everybody. Although country and upbeat would be a tough ask.
She needs to do a rock album.
89 too.
Is what she needs.
Rock album would be cool. And just but another 1989.
1990.
1987. Spin it back 2 years.
There
you go. That's a good one. So, but if I were to rank them, so I'd probably put the Alchemy fifth.
Okay.
I have to sneak that onto my top 5.
It's a good album or good song.
It's a quick song. There's a lot of repeat, but like I'm sorry, as a Chiefs fan, you have to have the Alchemy on there. So I'm going with that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
4, probably Fortnite. I do like Fortnite a lot.
Yeah, that's fair.
3 is probably So High School. I really enjoy it.
Nice.
She really it's kind of shocking how much insight she's giving us into their relationship, and I do need to find. I do want to know who are these bros who are playing Grand Theft Auto, and how oblivious were they? It's like,
right. Ross Travis.
Know what they were doing?
Super funny.
And then 2 probably. Are we calling it LOML or LOML or Love of My Life?
I like LOML. That's what I call it.
I mean, I like a slow ballad as much as anybody. I really I like that one a lot. And then, strangely enough, I think my favorite song right now, it feels like a song, is the Tortured Poets Department.
Yeah, interesting.
I actually really like that song as a song. But that's where I am right now. I'm still, I've listened to it several times, but I don't know if I've 31 songs is a lot
it's a lot to internalize for sure.
Yes, it is.
So good.
I just want to shout out what I think is going to be a big track for this one, which is on the back half, the second surprise album, I'm Gonna Get You Back. I think that one, every time I hear that one, it just kind of loops a couple more times in my head. So that's my dark horse for Tortured Poets.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen, especially to the second half, a little bit more. I know the first half song's much better.
Sure. So, okay.
Let's put a bow on this offseason
Yes.
talking before we spin forward to the draft. And I have to give you an opportunity, Randy, to um, give me your candidate for funniest offseason amongst our AFC quote unquote rivals. Now, this could be an AFC West team. It could be any AFC team. It could be the Chargers, who cut every wide receiver on their roster and then drafted a right tackle, fifth overall, with two potentially generational receiver prospects on the board. It could be the Broncos, of course, who drafted the second oldest, speaking of aging curves, callback, first round quarterback ever behind Brandon Whedon, who somehow is 28. That's
I
just
remember that.
the wildest pick I've ever heard of. Like, I can't believe that happened, even though I keep reading about it. They took the second oldest first round quarterback ever with the 12th overall pick as the quarterback 6 in the draft, or potential option, the Raiders, who don't have a quarterback at all because they picked behind the Broncos. We got a lot of options here, but why don't you give me your candidate for the funniest offseason by a Chiefs rival?
Well, it's definitely not the Chargers. Like, look, I hate to admit it, and I'm certainly not going to be
You're
like,
you're a Michigan man. So,
yeah, well, there's that, yes, but I'm certainly not going to be here and be like, well, I think the Chargers can win the division this year, unless speaking that into existence is what sort of triggers
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's an interesting
in which
theory.
case, guys, watch out. The Chargers could win this division this year.
Off-season champs.
If
But
they're ever not the offseason champs, that's when we got
that's
what
what I'm
we
saying.
need to
That's
watch
what
out.
we have to give them their flowers now so that they get none during the season.
That's great.
But look, Jim Harbaugh, I'm a little annoyed with him because like he had a chance to be this coming generation's Nick Saban for the next 10 years. He
Sure.
just having won at Michigan a national championship. Like, and yes, as a Michigan grad, it's very annoying that he goes from like helping my team win their first championship in a century to trying to deprive my real favorite football team of another championship. And I just don't know why you would leave such an incredible situation there.
Right.
But he is a really smart dude. And the fact that like you can make fun of them for, they had to cut all these guys and then they passed on, Adunze and Malik Neighbors to take Jawalt. But drafting the tackle where they did, that is the sober, solid, boring, but kind of quote unquote potentially winning move. Like I do believe that there's something to be said about winning the trend in the trenches. I know that's what he believes in. And then they took Ladd McConkey with their second round pick. And that's the other thing is like, this was such a deep draft for wide receivers that it's like I look at them their draft and some of the things they've done, and I'm just it's annoying. It's like, geez, they might actually know what they're doing a little bit now. And even though they cut all those guys, I mean, they were in salary cap hell.
Yeah,
and they're not going to be next year. Like they
did take their medicine.
Great spot. So this coming year they might take a step back. Although they have Justin Herbert. That's the other thing. They have they have one team in the division that they have their solution there. Right. So I think we'll be okay for the time being, but like they could be in a good spot a year from now. So we'll see. But speaking of like superstar head coaches with a history, who then it would be wonderful. Like I was hoping, and there's still time for it, but I was really hoping he would come in and make stupid moves and make win now moves, because it would literally complete the trifecta in the division.
Yeah,
where the Raiders brought in John Gruden to much pomp and circumstance 10 years ago now or whatever, former Super Bowl champion, former talking head on television. And let me tell you, it was because of what I've heard from him as a talking head on television that I was quietly kind of optimistic that would not work out great for them. And it did not work out beyond my wildest dream.
As well as anything has not worked out in a while in the NFL.
Well, but let me tell you, Sean Payton's giving him a run for his money right now.
Oh man.
Because the Broncos are they are my winners for the funniest offseason. And like we said at the beginning of the show, it's like just when you think it cannot get any better to be a Chiefs fan, the Broncos keep clowning themselves to the point where even their fans you guys should because Austin, you're in Denver, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you guys should have some sort of
Colorado.
like Denver despondency index or something,
Oh,
with like a regular feature on the show, because like
That's
you give us an assessment of the vibes of Denver Bronco fans around you.
You know what's incredible about the Broncos fans is I did tune in to local radio the day after the draft, and you would think that I mean, objectively speaking, an NFL team drafting a quarterback is like one of the biggest sports stories that can exist in any American sport, right? Like
Yep.
the quarterback's the most important position in the American sport, the NFL, right? Now, granted, the Avs and the Nuggets are both in the playoffs right now, and the Nuggets were playing the Lakers in the first round. All right, so the lead story the first thing, Schlereth and Evans, Mark Schlereth, Mike Evans, their lead story the day after the Broncos took Bo Nix in the draft. The Broncos, who by the way have not had a quarterback in now almost a decade since Peyton Manning retired, and haven't been to the playoffs since Peyton Manning retired. Their first story was about the Nuggets going up 3-1 on the Lakers, which, like, objectively, just not a big deal at all. It's the first round. Obviously, the Nuggets are going to win. It's practically a sweep at that point. And when they got around to Bo Nix, which was the second story before they switched over to the Avs, it really was just like, I like it. It's fine. Like, it's great. It's not, I like the guy. It's not, I love him, and it's not, I hate him. It's just indifference, to quote from a Lover track. And that is really, I think, the attitude. I think they can't even, it's bad when they can't even talk themselves into it fully. Like, they don't even want to talk about it because that's how bad it is. Like, it's just blah.
Yeah, I mean, indifference. What a wonderful place for Broncos fans to find themselves.
Oh, it's the best. It's so satisfying.
Because anger might, like actually propel them to do something different. But like, they already made a splash.
They're going to be angry in about 5
once the games start getting played.
Right, exactly. But like at some, are they going to be angry enough to jettison the Sean Payton experiment? Like,
right. Hopefully not.
We'll
because
see. Like, it was. I mean, it's almost funny that the Russell Wilson trade went so badly that they actually did pull the plug and take an unbelievable cap hit and all of that and move on. Like, I would
draft Bo Nix, which
I was kind of hoping that they
hilarious.
would have gone one more year. That was kind of my hope.
Yeah.
That things were because they actually they finished 9-8-9.
8-9.
They got hot at the end of the year.
Yeah, I was hoping
they had a chance to go above 500 for the first time in 6 seasons.
And I was hoping their hot finish would actually like trick them into, okay, we got to give this Russell Wilson thing one more year. Right. And unfortunately, Sean Payton is sort of savvy enough and has enough pull because he wasn't there when Russell Wilson was traded, was acquired, that he's like, no, we're moving on. And we're going to take the hit, et cetera, et cetera. But having replaced him, like, it might have actually worked out. Even moving on when they did might have worked out, because they just spent a top 12 pick, like you said, on QB6, on the 24-year-old quarterback that 5 other teams that desperately needed a quarterback. Well, not every team desperately needed a quarterback.
4 of them did. The 5th one did.
But 5 teams all were like, we need a quarterback. We're drafting a quarterback, and we're not taking Bo Nix.
And by the way, after they took Bo Nix, there was a literally historic quarterback.
First time ever, draft. 3 straight rounds, no quarterbacks were drafted.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say is,
would another team have taken him? Maybe
the Raiders. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which would have been fun too.
Yeah, right.
But this worked out. Like I said, it's like, it just, from a Chiefs perspective, there were no bad answers here. We got a great answer. They didn't move down. Like, if they had if they had moved down to like late in the first round, got some draft capital, taken them there.
Sure.
Like, okay, at least they used
setting themselves up,
savvy asset management, even if like they're drafting an incredibly old guy who really didn't find success until the very end of his his college career, when he's throwing he's throwing to guys who are like 4 years younger than him. So look, maybe he'll be Drew Brees. I mean, that's sort of like the idea here. But it didn't help the Broncos image in my mind that afterwards was it Adam Schefter who was reporting that that Sean Payton feels as strongly about Bo Nix as he felt about Patrick Mahomes.
I saw that.
That honestly made me even happier about the pick. That either Sean Payton actually believes that or he doesn't believe, but allowed Adam Schefter to put that out in the world.
Right.
Either way, it's like this. I'm not sure. Like Sean Payton is quietly, he's 60 years old, guys. Like he's only 6 years younger than Andy Reid, and he's in win now mode. And that was the other thing. It's like what makes their offseason even funnier is that they kind of needed Bo Nix just from the perspective of they just traded for Zach Wilson.
Right.
Yes. Like that would have been even if they hadn't taken Bo Nix, any team that gives up any draft capital for Zach Wilson is in its already in the process of having one of the funniest off seasons in the league.
They are down bad.
Sean is unbelievably high on his own supply. I mean, you saw the clip, I'm sure, of him, basically bragging about how he tricked the Vikings in trading up one spot for JJ McCarthy. And
he did that. The Vikings traded with the Jets and Norris. He tricked a team in the other conference to give up talent to help a team
in his conference.
If you tricked them into trading with you, okay.
Right.
How does tricking another team to what does it matter? One team gets more talent, one team gets less talent.
Right.
What on earth does that mean? Except that you help the team that's in the AFC.
Well, all the Saints fans were talking about how he's still butthurt about the Vikings and their kind of playoff clashes. So that he's brought his Vikings hate to the Broncos where it doesn't matter or apply.
If that were the case, hilarious. If that were the case, I almost at least then there's a reason. I understand. Look, we're sitting here talking about a Denver Broncos team in part because of what they did to us 27 years ago. So I respect
that's fair.
Holding on to grudges for a long time. Grudges. Yeah. That is, if that's what it is, then I respect it, even though I can still mock it. He's new to this Broncos Chiefs thing. We are not.
No,
so
that's right.
For his part in, extending our mockery of the Broncos is much appreciated. Just like I said, John Gruden with the Raiders. So, the Broncos win the award. At least right now, I am thoroughly satisfied with their offseason.
Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.
Hey, Kansas, if you haven't downloaded the BetMGM app yet, you will definitely want to take advantage of this offer. New users who sign up through our link can get up to $1,500 in bonus bets paid back if their first bet does not win. This means if you place a $50 first bet and the bet loses, you will be credited with a $50 bonus bet to use on your next wager up to $1,500. This offer is only available if you sign up through our link at bit.ly/SunnyMGM. You can find the link in the episode description to start signing up. Again, the link is bit.ly/SUNNYMGM. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 or older and physically present in Kansas. Please gamble responsibly. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Check the episode description to see if you qualify.
Well, let's talk about the Chiefs draft for what feels like the 10th year in a row. It's really been like the third or fourth year in a row. Brett Veach kind of teased this already, seemingly completely crushed it. And I want to start with this. It's crazy to me to see how far he has come in such a short time as the general manager of the Chiefs. To recap, his first draft class went as follows. Second round, 46 overall, Braylon Speaks. Third round, Derek Nottie. Third round, again, Dorian O'Daniel, pick 100. Fourth round, Armani Watts. Sixth round, 2 picks, Tremont Smith and Khalil McKenzie. That is a brutal draft class. I mean, understanding that he didn't have a first-round pick because of the Patrick Mahomes trade the previous year, which was executed, of course, by John Dorsey, at least nominally. Woof, that's terrible. And even as recently as last year, I feel like there was a very vocal portion of the Chiefs fan base and probably even the national talking heads that were pointing out, look, like the three pillars of this team, Mahomes, Kelce, Chris Jones, were all drafted by John Dorsey. And now here we are in May of 2024, and I feel like after 3 championship rings and consistently excellent drafts, really for the last 4 draft classes have all been really quite solid to, 2 years ago being historically good. Brett Veach is finally getting his due as one of the best GMs in the sport, and we'd like to obviously plumb your Rany, of just historical Kansas City sports knowledge. And I have to ask, is there anyone even in the conversation with Brett Veach as the greatest general manager in Kansas City sports history at this point?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So I will, I still stand for Cedric Tallis, who
Sure.
just, was just in the news recently, 45 years after he passed away, for being finally inducted into the Royals Hall of Fame. He was the original general manager of the Kansas City Royals.
Yep.
And you could just say from a degree of difficulty standpoint, I think what he did is hard even for Brett Veach to top, because it was an expansion team.
Right.
In a time when free agency didn't exist, with the only way to get talent, you had an expansion draft, and then it was really just the draft, which in baseball will take years to see results, even if you hit it, or trades, and was one of the greatest trading general managers in the history of the sport. Basically trading nothing for Amos Otis, nothing for Freddie Patek, nothing for John Mayberry, Lou Piniella. I mean, you understand the Royals were above 500 in their 3rd year of existence, which is funny when you consider the Kansas City A's never finished above 500 in 14 years in Kansas City and were not an expansion franchise. And then this new organization comes in and in their 3rd year is finishing 2nd place in the division. And, by the 7th year, at which point he had been fired, the Royals were, basically about to start a 10-year run of making the playoffs 7 times in 10 years, at a time where there only 4 teams made the playoffs. So Cedric Tallis, for his, had a 5-year run basically that is almost unparalleled. So whereas, Brett Veach comes in, he's already got Patrick Mahomes in part, or in large part because of Brett Veach. So we do have to account for that. But so Cedric Tallis is definitely, to me, is the guy to beat.
Obviously, Allard Baird right after that. I mean, it's 1A, 1B. Very, very close.
It's very close there. Poor Allard. I feel like it's a rare month where he doesn't take a stray from me on a podcast somewhere.
That's fair.
It's not entirely fair, but it's okay.
Just to name some longtime ones, you've got back from the Royals after Cedric Tallis, then Joe Burke from 74 to 81.
Right. John Schuerholz. I mean, Schuerholz was very good, but I mean, he really made his bones with the Braves after he left Kansas.
That's fair. Herc Robinson, 90 to 2000. I asked Austin before this began. It's like, I mean, I know that there was a GM between 90 and 2000, but boy, I didn't note anything. Do you remember anything about Herc Robinson?
He was better in retrospect than I thought at the time. But I mean, but the problem there, of course, is that the owner, Ewing Kauffman, died in 1993, and for 6 years, the Royals did not have an owner until David. And I mean, it's just an impossible situation for an organization to function.
That's fair.
To function without ownership. So
that's fair.
I'll give him a pass on some level, but yeah, he's not in this discussion. Who is the Chiefs? Who was running player personnel for the Chiefs in the 60s? I mean, that's the other guy that.
Jack Stedman, 61 to 75.
I couldn't remember. So I was thinking to say Stone.
Yeah.
Jack Stedman. So that's someone you definitely have to consider. The Chiefs were kind of pioneers with scouting.
The AFL. I mean, right. You want to talk about an expansion team. That's expansion league.
It's an expansion league, but of course they were going up against other teams in the expansion league.
Yeah.
But I would say the fact that they were so ahead of the curve in scouting historically black colleges,
right?
And a lot of their players,
second AFC team to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
So
and they were dominant. I think we have to give some credit there, on more than just a sports standpoint, even from just a pure civil rights standpoint, that there's probably a little bonus action there.
Sure. Sure.
So I think those coming into this, those two rank very highly.
Carl Peterson would be really.
I was about to say, if you had to create a Mount Rushmore, I think you probably have Carl Peterson as the fourth guy.
He's the fourth guy.
He was around forever, and
it's a really funny Mount Rushmore, to be honest.
But if you want to put Brett Veach, frankly, Dayton Moore might be fifth on some level just for that great.
Hey, he's got a championship.
Stretch. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he won a championship, nothing else. But like, man, that 2-year span, like
that peak was.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to look back on those 14-15 Royals in a long time from now and still remember them better than a lot of the other teams since then. I mean,
they were an incredibly fun team, but there is a part of me, and we're running into Kaufman corner territory here, but I am hopeful that 10-15 years from now we will look back on JG Piccolo not just as like, you know, a guy who deserves credit on this, but like maybe he was the secret architect of those teams himself, like that, because it's so is such a strange you know, kind of development in the middle of this like just historic stretch of futility that the Royals were incredible for so long. And, you know, I was perhaps too long to give them credit for it afterwards that they had figured out something. But the way things ended with Dayton Moore makes me think that I think he just got lucky. But it's possible that, you know, if his assistant continues to have success, and, you know, we're talking about a month of sample size here compared to, like, you know, the worst season in Royals history, tied for the most losses in the Royals history last year.
Sure.
So, you know, the book on JJ Piccolo is far from clear, but like there is a scenario if he ends up being a successful GM where we might go back and give him additional credit for being a part of, or maybe even like the guy, you know, an underrated clutch part of building a championship team for the Royals back in 2015. So right now it is, I would probably rank them. Look, I'm a Tallis stan. I always have been, always will. So I probably still go Tallis, then Veach,
Stedman maybe next,
and then Peterson. Probably is my top four.
That's reasonable, and I love that you were able to talk for 10 minutes on that, completely unprompted. This is why we love having you on the show.
Yes,
for the listeners don't. I think fully appreciate that we literally give you nothing before you come on here. It's not that we can't. We could tell you in advance what we're going to talk about, but you just intuit everything that's going on, and we really appreciate that conversation.
The problem is as I get older, I'm having trouble with names. So it's glad you guys are here to like
no,
give
that's
the name.
Completely fair.
What was the chief wide receiver a year ago?
Oh,
sure.
Right. No, that's fair.
Remember his name.
Here's an easy one. Favorite draft pick from this class for you?
From this class, Man, you know what? That's a good question because I do like. There's a lot that I like here. The first four.
You can say Xavier Worthy. It's completely fine.
I was going to say. I mean, it's like it's one of those where it's like, well, Xavier Worthy. It's too easy to say, but it's also
sometimes that's correct.
Sometimes correct, right? I think like in the sense of if there's a pick where 3 weeks into the season, we are laughing and laughing, and the rest of the league is like, how the hell did we let the Chiefs get
especially the Bills?
Well, there's that part of it. Honestly, I get it. I love clowning on the Broncos. I love clowning on, you know, the Bengals, the Bills. It's like I almost feel like at this point, I almost just feel sorry. Like let's. But I want to give it a rest a little
themselves because
they did themselves, and it's like if they really thought Xavier Worthy was that good, they obviously would have taken. Like it's not like they were surprised. Oh my god, I can't believe the Chiefs took the guy that we get. Yeah, they knew what they were doing, and part of it I think also is that so many people are like, I can't believe they traded with us again after giving us Patrick Mahomes. They didn't give us Patrick Mahomes. They gave us a draft pick that we used. Like, and like
could have drafted Deshaun Watson.
From the Bills' perspective, well, that too, but also it's like from the Bills' perspective, even if you say, oh my God, how could they trade Patrick Mahomes? They ended up with like the best case scenario.
Yeah, right.
If you're going to trade the pick that turns into Patrick Mahomes, they got, you know, extra draft picks. They actually used their draft picks fairly well. Right?
Trey White was awesome.
Trey
White, and they used one of those picks to move up.
Very good for several years.
Josh Allen.
And then the very next year, they draft Josh Allen, who, if gun to my head, is the second best quarterback in football. Like they got the next best guy a year later. Like it just so happens that the guy they traded is, you know, a Terminator sent from the future to destroy their hopes and dreams and beat the second best quarterback in football 3 times to the playoffs. It's a tragedy for them, but I don't think they did anything mock-worthy. It's the 9 teams ahead of them who drafted somebody other than Patrick Mahomes that deserve a lot more mockery. Obviously, the Bears and the Bears get their share of that.
Trubisky, yep.
With Trubisky, but it's like the Bills. Yes, it was brave of them to trade with us again. But I don't hold them too responsible. Look, yes, we'll make fun of them if he ends up good, but it's also the other 27 teams who, knowing that Xavier Worthy is not a surprise. Like if he comes out and is awesome, nobody can claim they were surprised. The man ran the fastest combine 40 in the history of the combine. Like he was still running like a victory lap around the field. Like he did not come to a complete stop during the combine before people on TV were like, well, that guy's going to be a Chiefs draft pick. Like it was so obvious, and that's the thing. It's like, well, gee, what an obvious pick. But I like the pick because there's so many people afterwards, certainly Chiefs haters, but also people who just were doubted the pick. Were like, you look at all the guys who have run sub 4.25 combine 40s, and none of them were really panned out in the NFL. It's this idea that he's just a speed guy, and but people whose opinions of football film I trust, delving into the film were months ago, before the Chiefs drafted him, before really maybe even before the combine itself, were genuinely impressed with his ability as a receiver above and beyond the speed. And the idea that if he had ran a 4.3 instead of a 4.21, people might actually take him more seriously. The number is so freakish that it just dominates everything about what you say about Xavier Woods. But he's a great route runner. He
stops on a dime.
Right, exactly. The route tree he can run is good. And the thing that really stands out is that almost all the other speed demons, you look at John Ross, whose record he broke and briefly was a Chief.
Yep.
They took a chance on
Patrick Mahomes as well.
None of these guys really dominated or were successful really in college, at least until they were a senior.
Right. I'm glad you brought this up. Bringing it back to the
he didn't play as a senior. He's junior, and he was a starter and like the best. I think the most receiving yards on the Texas squad 3 years in a row as a freshman, sophomore, junior,
a true freshman.
And the other thing against him is he's slight, he's tiny, and is it a concern? Sure, it's a concern, but he never missed a game in college. Like when we talk about the slightness of his build, so much of it is just kind of he's going to get hurt, and of course he could, and we have to be worried about that. But he's never been hurt, and
big receivers get hurt too.
Right,
Sammy Watkins and Mike Williams, and
nothing correlates with injury risk.
No,
more than previous injury history. Not size correlates less.
Yeah.
So what is he? He's 5'11" and 165, I think.
Right.
He was measured at 5'11.2.
I think he trimmed down a little bit to run a faster 40. I think he probably was playing a little bit more closer to 170 something at Texas. That's
right. And who's a first round pick who's listed at 6 foot and 170?
Jordan Addison.
Well, no, actually, it came out of Jordan Addison's a good example too. The guy I was thinking about though is DeVonta Smith.
DeVonta Smith, skinny Batman. Absolutely,
exactly. Skinny Batman. Exactly. That's what we're talking about here, right? Like, could he be skinny Batman? Yes. And again, the other thing is he's 21 barely. He was 20 on draft day. He just
crazy.
I don't want to, I am the draft age guy. That's my my thing. But I don't want to overdo this because last year I think we talked after the draft, and I said I was a little bit concerned, about the Chiefs' second round pick, Rashee Rice, because he was 23, like on draft day. And that did not stop him, obviously. So it's not everything. No, except physics, apparently.
But you're right.
But being 21 is like, especially for a guy whose build you're kind of worried about. It's like this guy could still physically develop a little bit.
So let's talk about the wide receivers on the team. Now that they've acquired Worthy, now that they've acquired Hollywood Brown, we'll talk about Rice because eventually he will be available for this team, especially when the games matter, like you mentioned earlier, in the playoffs when they really need it. And then the three deep behind them in some order, and maybe these names will change around or maybe they'll make a move, but like Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, something like that. They declined Kadarius Toney's fifth-year option today, so certainly they're not feeling super fired up about him, but In 2020, the Legion of Zoom wide receivers on that team were Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, McCole Hardman, Robinson, Pringle, and Kemp were the three after that. I kind of wonder if the Chiefs just went from like the wide receiver room being their biggest Achilles heel of the 2023 season to like, have they had a better wide receiver group in the last recent memory, the last 10 years, than a peak of Hollywood, Rice, and Worthy at the top? That's fun. That's pretty good. How are you feeling
it's very
about that,
fun. It's very fun. I think until it's not as proven as any wide receiving core that had like Tyreek Hill on it. Like the potential is there for it to be better. I don't want to say it's definitely better than when they had Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill and any third receiver.
Tyreek's a one of one guy,
right?
For sure.
And I just and Sammy Watkins was, when he was healthy, was very, very good. And also Rashee Rice may not be there for much of the season. Like that's the other thing. If Rashee Rice didn't decide to rent a Lamborghini in Dallas, I might agree with you. But right now there's enough risk there, and obviously Xavier Worthy is a rookie in a Andy Reid offense, and I think Rashee Rice, to his credit, maybe making us forget how rare it is to see a rookie wide receiver make an impact in the Andy Reid offense. I mean, they're already talking about Dave Tobin said, this is the best punt returner I've seen in years or whatever.
Since Tyreek.
Since Tyreek. Which let's if you don't mind me taking a little detour here from a special team standpoint. Look, Dave Tobe is great. He had an off year in 2022 that made everybody angry, and I looked like just a blip, and came back and they were great again this past year. But I'm trying to imagine Xavier Worthy as punt returner, and then the guy we have not mentioned at all on this. We need to talk about Luis Reese Zamet, if I'm assuming I'm saying his name right.
Yeah.
Louis Red Zone might be easier to say.
Lightning.
Louis Red Zone is great.
I just look, Louis. Speaking of age, Luis Zamet is. Let me make sure I got his age.
20, right? I think.
Not 20. No, he's 23. He's younger. He's younger. That's right. He's basically the same age when he was signed as Rashee Rice. Let's put it this way. He is a year younger than Bo Nix.
I didn't convert correctly from.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So he's a year younger than Bo Nix, and is already my understanding, maybe not the best rugby player in the world, but maybe the best young.
Certainly a star.
And he was. We looked this up. There's a world rugby ranking, and he was right around the 70th best player in the world.
The NFL does an NFL top 100, and that was like Lamar Jackson's range this last year.
Right.
So he's certainly a rugby star.
And one of the rugby stars on the list for sure.
Yeah. But I think the important thing here is the kind of player he was. I mean, he ran a 4.43 40.
Yep.
And
he was disappointed in it.
In the
40. Yeah.
And I look at him and look.
He also ran 23 miles an hour in a game, which is as fast as Tyreek Hill has run in a game.
And look, I don't expect a basketball player to come in and immediately be good at football, but rugby. It's rugby.
It's basically football, right?
It's old football. It's ancient football is what he was playing.
Yes.
He's used to carrying an oblong ball, while running really far and being hit by people.
Yep. Some similarities.
There's absolutely a world I could see where this guy ends up being a wide receiver at some level, running. They list him as running back, like actually carrying the ball from scrimmage. And look, he may be nothing, but my God, they gave up nothing to get him. But I actually think that, especially with the new kickoff rules, this guy is. I mean, I'm really rooting for him to win the kickoff return job because it'll be so much fun.
Yes,
and to have him and Xavier Worthy in the punt return role to start the season,
the speed.
I mean, You're worried about Patrick Mahomes, and next thing you know, Patrick Mahomes is not coming on the field because you're getting the ball back.
You got to worry about Uncle Dave now.
Xavier Worthy is 165 pounds, so let's take it easy there, Uncle Dave. I get it, maybe for special occasions, but I don't need him back there all the time.
We want the big Welshman out there.
Let's see what Louis Red Zone can do. I love that.
No, I would love for him. Yeah, we just give him both roles because if Xavier Worthy works his way into being a starting wide receiver, then yes, absolutely. But is just another skill guy that we picked up, and it's just the amount of my one concern with the off season, they had to prioritize it. They just haven't done much to improve the defense, right? I mean, they lost LeJarry Sneed. They lost Willie Gay, which is actually kind of a quietly that worries me a
I
little
was
bit.
disappointed about that.
And especially for 1 year and $5 million, like they
not
never
have...
seemed to warm up to Willie Gay. Even though Willie Gay, he wasn't perfect, but like he had a skill set that is hard. The athleticism is going to be hard to replace. So but they've added so much offensive talent this year, right? Obviously, they might have a new left tackle in Sumaitia. And Worthy and Hollywood Brown,
Carson Wentz,
Jared Wiley will probably get on the field, and they probably are hoping will be TE2 by the end of the year over and over again. But like having both those guys, like and they have Irv Smith Jr. I guess now, but like we were going with Blake Bell as tight end 3 last year, so like there's been improvement for sure here. Louis Red Zone in some roles can be fun. Okay, they brought back Clyde for some bizarre reason. But nobody's perfect. But the improvement on the offensive side, if we assume that Jawan Taylor, doesn't get called for false starts, every 3 plays early in the season, and he can settle in. Like there's the hope here is that the defense, which was the youngest defense in football last year on a snap adjusted basis, like the fact that they're a year older is not a sign of decline, but like they're still young enough that they can maintain their performance level, despite losing L'Jarius Sneed, because Jaden Hicks was like a huge find in the 4th round. And they'll have Nazeeh Johnson back. Like there's even Brian Cook was out for half the year. Right? So like if the defense can be 5% worse, if the defense is 95% as good, and we get back to maybe not in at least a 2020 level offense, if not 2018, like this could be the most talented on both sides of the ball. The Chiefs have been super worldly on offense. They have been elite on defense and good on offense, but they have not yet. I don't think we've yet seen them be like top 3 in both departments under the Patrick Mahomes era, and that's the dream this year. But I want to throw this out with you guys. This is the concern I have on defense. It's a concern, and yet it's also an interesting presents an interesting option for the Chiefs. Who is the 4th linebacker on this team right now?
Well, Jack Cochran.
Yep, I think it's Jack Cochran who right now in my mind is like, is this guy just Daniel Sorensen? Is he Ben Neiman? Like who is we saw him? He tried really hard when he got thrown in there in the game last year, but
he did. I mean, obviously we like Bolton, we like Chanel, and
Drew Tranquill's great. Like we have to. That's why letting Willie Gay go is so concerning, because for $5 million, like you need 4 line. Like if anybody gets hurt,
Jaden Hicks is going to be the linebacker.
Well,
if anybody gets hurt.
But this is my point.
He might actually be the full-time linebacker.
Your defensive backs right now that are listed, you have obviously McDuffie, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Justin Reed, and Brian Cook at safety.
Yep.
Then you have Chamari Connor, Jaden Hicks, Nazeeh Johnson. There's also Dion Bush, but like Hicks, Chamari Connor, and Nazeeh Johnson are all recent draft picks who, Nazeeh's coming back from an injury, but people were really high on before that. Chamari looked really good in snaps in the second half of the season. Hicks, a lot of people thought he could have been a 2nd round pick. He might have been the biggest steal just from a draft board standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, do the Chiefs just like become the first team in football to play every snap in nickel or dime?
Man.
Yeah.
I wonder if FAU can play a little linebacker. You're going to need maybe to mix somebody in there, because...
Well, it's just interesting because, I mean, it's like ordinarily be like, how the hell do you only have like 3, like, how do you go through an offseason with only 3 linebackers on the team? Like, that you need more. But then there's the part of me that's like, well, Steve Spagnuolo's in charge of this. Like I said, the positions are just a suggestion.
That's right.
Steve Spagnuolo. And that's the genius of Steve Spagnuolo. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, there is a plan here. I'm not smart enough to know what the plan is, but there's very clearly a plan here. And I do not think it's a coincidence that while they have 3 starting caliber linebackers, they have maybe 7 starting caliber defensive backs. I'm like, we are going to see, whether in name or not, we are going to see some of these defensive backs playing linebacker for all intents and purposes. I hadn't even thought about the whole, move FAU back into coverage. Or
I mean, I'm just, they got to throw something at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, well, I'm
right?
going to say, I mean, and Leo Chenal, the other thing, of course, is the linebackers. Leo Chenal is practically a lineman half the time himself anyway, right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the only true lineman, and then Nick Bolton is like, he's just like sort of he's the green dot of the defense. He's the leader, but like, from an athletic, he's not the guy sideline to sideline guy you want.
That was Willie Gay.
Exactly. Which again, I still think we could have scrounged up $5 million for Willie Gay to come back. But
and
Drew
there's
Tranquill
still
is
some
the
room
only
here for
linebacker.
Free agent move or something. I mean, there's a chance that they can bolster that a little bit, right?
I should point out too that they did sign several UDFA linebackers, and you mentioned Jack Cochran and Ben Neiman. I mean, this is a team that loves to throw out.
You did.
No, Rany did.
Okay.
But you're right. Undrafted free agents.
This team loves to throw out UDFA linebackers. Jack Cochran, Ben Neiman. We have a long tradition of linebacker 4 being a guy that was not drafted, and Ben Neiman. I know we're dumping on the guy, but
I thought he was
played a little bit.
I have a personal connection there, so I'm not
nice.
A little biased, but
sure.
But
I mean, listen,
he was as good as he could have been.
Yeah, exactly right. He played his part.
He had a hell of a play in Super Bowl 54 that when we were watching back, I was like, oh, there you go, Ben Neiman. Rany, you're the legacy guy. You're the guy that, has the great perspectives. All your pieces are usually very with that in mind. There's been just this tantalizing kind of possibility that I would be remiss if we didn't talk about. The things available to Mahomes Chiefs this upcoming season that were never accomplished by Brady's Patriots. There are 3 things here that I'm just
we really are mind melding. I promise we did not discuss beforehand, but I know exactly where you're going.
There's the three-peat, which of course is the one that that's been the most public accomplishment.
And the one that Mahomes is talking about on the podium.
Well, it's interesting because a year ago, that was not, we did not bring it up a year ago. This one, when we were talking about like things he could do to outpace the Brady legacy.
Yes.
It didn't occur to me that a three-peat, because you have to two-peat first.
You got to do the 2.
But here we are. We've got but it's funny because that's the one everyone's talking about now, which understandably, because it's not available to you every year.
Correct.
Like you've got to take advantage of that one when it presents itself.
Yeah, it's like a blood moon or whatever. I mean, it's definitely so we've got the three-peat. The Patriots never did it. They of course did 3 out of 4, but didn't do the 3 in a row. That would be a feather in the cap of Mahomes and the Chiefs that they never did. And with that, though, is like a level up version of that accomplishment, which is the undefeated season, the white whale of the NFL season that only the 72 Dolphins accomplished, that Brady, of course, got to the doorstep and lost to Eli. That, if they did accomplish an undefeated season this year, would include them accomplishing the longest winning streak in NFL history. They would get to, they're on a 6-gamer right now, so they would get to 26 if they won that, and the record, of course, is 22 by the Patriots. So
22, or I thought it was 24.
I thought it was 22. I guess I'm pulling that off the top of my head.
I believe it's 24, and it's not the near undefeated season. I think it was actually in 2000. Like it was back to
304. Yeah, I think.
Okay, I got you.
I believe it's 24, but but I mean, in theory, yes, if they accomplish the undefeated season, they'll have that as well.
Yeah. So that being said, because those things are at least a possibility, which you don't often enter an NFL season with this type of possibility. If the Chiefs went 20-0, you would also presume that would probably include a third MVP for Mahomes. You would sure think it's hard to imagine them accomplishing that without him being Mahomes. So that would give him, just for everyone keeping track at home, a 4th title in the last 6 years. The Chiefs would be at the 7th consecutive AFC Championship game, and they would also in this path defeat 3 playoff teams that we know would be completely devastated and soul sucked to lose to the Chiefs yet again. So I wonder if the GOAT title is actually achievable for Mahomes in this scenario, his 8th professional football season. What say you?
You're saying that at the end of, not only that he could become the GOAT, but he could become the GOAT 12 months from now.
Yes. It's achievable with a perfect season.
That's aggressive. I will say, I'm glad you brought this, the possibility of the, I'm trying to think of what I would call this. The double. They have this in European football, where you the double of like winning the League Cup, like the FA Cup,
Oh, sure.
and the Premiership, like two completely unrelated events at the same time.
Yeah.
That there's no real there's no overlap. You
Connection.
have to succeed.
Yeah.
Right? There's no connection.
Yeah.
And I was tempted to bring this up, but I'm like, I didn't want, having already discussed this last year. Oh, we could go out, even thinking about being undefeated, and then they go out and they
Right.
They
start like 9-6, or
hard.
I was just like, do I really want to bring this up? But since you brought it up, I'm glad you brought it up, because
I did.
Look, I'm not saying they are going to go 17-0 and then 20-0.
Correct.
I do think though that they are coming off a year where they were 11-6, but like they lost one game all year by more than one possession. They obviously stormed through the playoffs and went undefeated in 4 games against maybe the toughest playoff slate ever.
Yep.
And they have fixed. They have aggressively addressed, let us say, the massive weakness on their roster that was the source of almost all of their angst last year. And they've lost a little bit of talent. They lost a great player at a position where they have another great player, and they have a proven ability to turn unheralded players into great players. So there is certainly a possibility that they get off to a 6-0, 7-0, 8-0 start, and suddenly the world comes to the realization that one of the rarest feats in sport, the undefeated season, almost unprecedented, on the way to a three-peat, which is unprecedented, at the same time.
Yep.
This is, and I think we need to bring this up, because I don't, as much as the average football fan thinks, oh, we can't possibly take any more Chiefs talk, that like we've already reached peak Chiefs saturation.
Oh boy.
I don't think you realize that there is the level of saturation in terms of media coverage, in terms of everything. A Chiefs team that's now 11-0, 12-0, and we are talking about going undefeated to win a three-peat, to do that Patrick Mahomes has a chance to do 2 things.
The double.
That eluded Tom Brady with Taylor Swift in every single game. Like the amount of Chiefs coverage is going to be unprecedented.
Historic. Yeah.
It's going to be unprecedented if they pull that off. Well, first off, I think Travis Kelce, then the GOAT discussions there are over. Like that one,
yes.
There's still people who want to put Gronk up there, and
and
I've made this case in terms of peak value. You can absolutely make the case that peak Gronk was the best tight end ever, but it was a brief peak. But in terms of career value, I think Kelce's already clearly there. But I get that point. That's the first domino to fall when you're talking about the crumbling of the Patriots aura. Is Gronk?
He's Gronk. That's good.
Gronk goes.
Like one
Gronk
of
succumbs
Thanos'
to
right-hand men that has to go down before
exactly.
Yeah.
The first flank is turned, right? Gronk is subsumed by Travis Kelce.
That's good.
I don't think at the end of that people will be like, that's it, it's over. Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT. No, I don't think that'll happen. But I think that there was the first chink in the wall that occurred this postseason and after the Super Bowl, where people were willing to entertain something they thought was closed shut after Patrick Mahomes lost to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. The idea that there was a potential for Patrick Mahomes to pass him, that was opened up again by this year's Super Bowl, where people did the math and wait a minute, he's already, he's now caught Tom Brady in terms of Super Bowls by age 28, and we've now entered the fallow period of Tom Brady's championship run. So I think that if we pull this off, it will open up the discussion fully to the idea that Patrick Mahomes could become the GOAT, even though he lost to Tom Brady in 2 playoff games. We now have to acknowledge the possibility that if Patrick Mahomes goes on and wins 1 or 2 more Super Bowls and but probably passes Tom Brady in terms of career yards and all the career records, in part because he played more games, but even so, that yes, there is now a path. The narrative path changes that I think the world will accept. And the sooner you change that narrative, the more time he has to make it stick. Right? You got to start changing that narrative now so that people start acknowledging the possibility, so that with every game he wins, every record he sets, you've already set that narrative in place that he is chasing Tom Brady, and that the chase it is an open.
It's viable.
It's viable. That is, that the chase is open to him. That it has not been closed. That the competition has not been shut down, because that competition was considered shut down by most people until 3 months ago. And I think that it is now open, but it's going to take something extraordinary.
I love
a three-peat would do it. It would open it up certainly more because it's something he's never done. An undefeated season at any point would do it.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the thing. I mean, we always have that chance to do that. Like, and it'll be very interesting. Do you if you get to 14 or 15, do you rest him? Like,
is the Super Bowl worth more than the undefeated season?
Right. Do you sacrifice the potential for an undefeated season to maintain the viability? Because the three-peat is more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue three-peat. Obviously, championship is always more important.
Yes, always.
Than going 16-1 and winning the Super Bowl is still better than taking a risk. And certainly, and I think the Chiefs can justify that because of what happened to the 2007 Patriots.
Right.
That people look back at that, and it's just, it would have been great, but like, you'd rather have a champ. You always rather have the title. But if they can pull it out, and then, hey, Carson Wentz may be a really important guy.
That's right.
Starting in week 18.
Going for the undefeated
season. He's going to be taking on. I was going to say Jarrett Stidham, but he's a Bronco now.
He still might be taking on
or Gardner Minshew, or Jarrett Stidham, or Bo Nix.
Yeah.
In week 18,
be a clash of the Titans. Little house cleaning on the streak, because I looked that up. It is 21 by the Patriots regular season and postseason. So we were both over by a little bit. The Colts,
you could do that during the regular season.
Exactly. The Colts had a 23 game regular season only streak that included a playoff loss in the middle of that, but 23 is the regular season.
That's a very Peyton Manning stat. Right?
It is. Although they won the Super Bowl in 2009 at the end of that streak. So I mean, he was fine there. But just clean up on what that streak was. Rany, super appreciate the long conversation here. That was great. Can't wait to talk to you again. I'm sure we'll check in, camp or early season or something like that. And enjoy the Royals run. Enjoy this summer. I think we're going to have a good time. It's going to be fun.
Sounds good, guys. Talk to you soon.